I've done 123 real drafts this offseason, several dozen mock drafts on different platforms, and I've gone through more research than you can imagine for 2025 fantasy football. And what I'm telling you is that I believe I found the best draft strategy for 2025 fantasy football. And I think the best part about this strategy we're going to go through today is it encompasses any draft position that you are drafting from in 2025, because what we're going to be focusing on here is make sure that you are hitting your round one pick. You need to make sure that you do everything possible to maximize round one. So make sure to go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support if you get value from the video today, which I know you will, because I'm sure you've heard of multiple different draft strategies, like the hero running back strategy, the double hero running back strategy, the zero running back strategy. Well, actually what we're going to be going through today, and I know this is going to work in 2025, is I'm going to be targeting the elite quarterback / tight end strategy. So what this is essentially is going to consist of is making sure that we're going to grab a quarterback or a tight end in either round 2 or round 3 in 2025 fantasy football drafts. The values this year that we're getting with both guys like Brock Bowers, Trey McBride at the tight end position, and Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and even Jalen Hurts in certain different types of formats, I think are fantastic in the second to third round in 2025 fantasy football. So what you can see on the screen here right now is what I'm going to be doing exactly round by round for the first 11 rounds in my fantasy football drafts to encompass the perfect draft strategy for 2025. So in round 1, we're actually going to go wide receiver here. And I want to highlight that particularly because we're going to target wide receivers very specifically by each draft position, and I will go through different mock drafts that I've actually done in 2025 to highlight using this draft strategy and the wide receivers I got at each draft position. And in round 2, we're going to go with either a running back, a quarterback, or a tight end. Now, this will depend on your draft position here. For example, in one of my mock drafts, you're going to see that if we get an early pick in the first round, that means we're going to have to wait till the back of the second round to take either a quarterback, a tight end, or a running back. That's probably an ideal place to go with a quarterback or a tight end, and then just pick an early round 3 running back, because in round 3, you're going to either go running back, quarterback, or tight end, whatever you did not pick in that second round. Now, I want to make this clear. We are not picking both an elite quarterback and an elite tight end in these first 2 rounds right here. We do not want to do that. We only want to get one or the other, and I don't particularly care which one that you prefer to go with, but I'm going to highlight the cases for why you should go with particular players in rounds 2 or 3. And then in rounds 4 and 5, we're going to go with wide receiver to make sure we get a really strong 3 wide receiver combination within the first 5 rounds. Because most of the time, you're going to be playing in either a 3 wide receiver league or a double flex league. So you want to make sure that your wide receiver position is tied off really strong within the first 5 rounds. Then rounds 6 through 11, we're going to be targeting 3 running backs over that time, and either a quarterback or a tight end. So whichever position between quarterback and tight end that you did not go with in round 2 or round 3, we're going to target that between rounds 6 and 11. So the first question I want to address here is, why are we not going with a running back in round 1? Well, there's a couple different reasons here, and I've highlighted this actually several times this offseason. Number 1, running backs are just historically more injury prone than wide receivers. I've discussed this on several videos. Wide receivers obviously have gotten a lot of favorable rule changes over the NFL history, particularly the last 10 to 15 years. You can't really hit a wide receiver over the middle anymore, which means that they're going to be playing most of the time more than running backs will for a full season. Because of the fact that running backs are going up the middle, getting cracked by defensive tackles that are 300 pounds, getting cracked by defensive ends, linebackers that hit really hard, you're just more prone to injury. And there's proof behind this, because the majority of first-round running backs have had a huge workload the prior year. And before I get into the proof, I think it's important to highlight the reality of first-round running backs in particular. So with first-round running backs, the majority of them, year by year, had a huge workload the past year in fantasy football, which makes them particularly risky in fantasy football. So again, we're going to get into this research right here, and what you can see on the screen is a bunch of different names. I'm going to go through exactly what we're looking for here. I studied running backs with 350 plus touches in a fantasy football full season since 2014. Now, you can see there's probably about 15 to 20 names on this list right now. And what I wanted to get was the year that they did it, the touches amount that they had in the big year, the touches per game, because I want to see what they did on a per game basis. And then the following year, how many touches did they get? How many games did they play? What was their touch per game percentage and running back finish in fantasy football? So the big takeaways are what we're highlighting right here, which is that if you look at the amount of games played by running backs the year after they had a 350 plus touch year, is that they averaged 10.5 games played. That's like almost half the season gone right there for running backs that, again, are most of the time going to go in the first round next year because they had an elite finish the prior year. So people are going to naturally go with the recency bias with their first round pick. And then the 27.8% of these guys missed half the following season. So again, that's not a huge number right there, but the average is 10.5. That's not very good. And some of the more specific numbers that we could see here is that 100% of these guys, they all lost volume the following season. Now, you may say to me, Ryan, that doesn't particularly matter because if someone like a DeMarco Murray had 450 touches in 2014, even if he had 350 touches in 2015, he probably still is a top 5 running back. And listen, that's totally fine. We can discuss that in a little bit. But 94.4% of these guys dropped below 350 touches. So that is automatically taking them out of contention in all likelihood to be the running back one in fantasy football. And 88.9% of these guys lost 60 plus touches the following season. So again, if you have a running back who had 360 touches the previous year, the following year, he's probably in all likelihood going to drop to 300 or 310 touches at the very maximum in that following year. That's just not good drafting strategy right there. And what you can actually see here is that all of the players who increased their volume on a per game basis the following season after the 350 plus touch year, they all got injured. Every last one of these guys got injured if they increased touches on a per game basis. And you know it's bad when especially Derrick Henry does. All of this led to 61.1% of these running backs on this list finishing as the running back 15 or worse in the following season. So let's look at someone in particular who's going really early in drafts right now, because this is exactly the reason why I started doing this research, was because I've been nervous about Saquon Barkley's price the whole time. Saquon Barkley is going anywhere from the 102 to the 104 typically in most draft formats. Well, you can see on the list at the bottom here of the takeaways that these are the guys, Matt Forte, Adrian Peterson, Zeke Elliott, Saquon Barkley. They had 4 seasons as 350 plus touch guys. So the majority of them are not having 4 seasons as 350 plus touch guys. That would indicate that Saquon Barkley is probably not going to do it again. So this is just a really big reason you should not draft running backs in round 1. Now here's the reality of first round running backs versus wide receivers since 2018 from a fantasy finish perspective, because I want to make sure we're all on the same page that wide receiver is definitely the better move in round 1. So what you can see here is on the list of guys right here, I went down to 2018 all the way up to 2024, and I studied all ADPs from every single one of those years and where they finished in fantasy football compared to their ADPs. Now, the important thing to know here is that in the first round, we want to be targeting guys who are going to be finishing inside the top 6, inside the top 12. I think finishing inside the top 12 is an extremely low bar. You should be absolutely targeting guys who are trying to finish inside the top 6. Because what I also discussed on a previous video just a couple days ago, actually, from recording this one, is bust-proof players. What actually makes a bust-proof guy is that you will not finish more than 5 spots below where your current ADP is. Now, what you can see here at the bottom is that all these takeaways from all these years, from 2018 to 2024, a 7-season sample size, 30.2% of running backs drafted in the first round finished inside the top 6. Compare that to wide receivers, who 51.7% of those wide receivers drafted in the first round, they finished as top 6 wide receivers. So that is a 20-point swing towards the wide receivers here. That's already just a smarter move in general, as you can see. Now let's say top 12, right? That should give running backs a big leap and probably be able to contend a little bit better with the wide receiver position if we're counting top 12 finishes. It's actually not that much better. 56.6% of running backs drafted in the first round finished as top 12 running backs. Wide receivers, 72.4% of wide receivers in the first round finished inside the top 12. You're still maintaining a near 20-point swing at wide receiver in the first round as far as effectiveness of hitting on that first round pick. So wide receivers are just a better place to go to in your first round. Now, I wanted to be fair to running backs here because since 2018, and I wanted to be honest with all of you, 29 wide receivers have been drafted inside the first round since 2018. Compare that to 53 running backs since 2018. That's a pretty big swing right there. Wide receivers are being drafted almost half as often as running backs in the first round since the year of 2018. Now, that did change starting in 2022. 2022 to 2024, 18 wide receivers have been drafted in the first round, and 17 running backs have been drafted from 2022 to 2024. So obviously, the lower number there and the more even it is, the percentages should, in theory, be a little bit more even as well. So let's see how they stack up like that. Well, it's actually still pro wide receiver. 35.3% of running backs drafted in the first round finished inside the top 6, compared to wide receivers, where 44.4% of wide receivers drafted in the first round finished inside the top 6. Again, we're still at a 10-point swing here in favor of wide receivers. And then top 12 finishes, 52.9% of running backs since 2022 that were drafted in the first round have finished inside the top 12, compared to wide receivers at 77.8. That's a huge swing for the wide receiver position right here. Pro wide receiver round 1. You've got to do it to make sure you do not screw up the first round pick and to make sure you hit really well on that first round pick. So we're all on the same page here. Wide receiver round 1 for sure. So let's get into some of my mock drafts that I did. What I did here in this first one was I picked at the 103 right here. So I targeted Justin Jefferson in the first round. Now, my honest opinion here is that I prefer CeeDee Lamb, but for purposes of this video, I chose Justin Jefferson only because CeeDee Lamb has a 106, 107 ADP on the Sleeper app, which is where I was doing this mock draft right here. If you go to Yahoo, if you go to ESPN, you're going to find CeeDee Lamb more often than not being closer to the 104 than he is to the 107. So I picked Justin Jefferson in the first round. Then in the second round, I went ahead and grabbed Josh Jacobs. Now, if you recall something I said earlier in this video, I do believe that I made an oversight here. I should have ended up going with a guy like Josh Allen in the second round, because what I wasn't convinced of was that one of two of my running backs that I was trying to target here would be available by my third pick. And the two running backs I particularly wanted were Josh Jacobs and Jonathan Taylor. So obviously I grabbed Josh Jacobs. We'll never know if he would have made it back to me, but Jonathan Taylor did make it back to me. So I could have went ahead and grabbed Josh Allen in the second round and then followed that up with Josh Jacobs or Jonathan Taylor, and that probably would have made me a little bit more comfortable. But getting Trey McBride in the third round is no slight to him. Trey McBride at a third round value is elite. Again, we're targeting that elite quarterback or that elite tight end by round 2 or 3. So you want to make sure you walk away from round 2 or 3 with a quarterback or a tight end. So I've got Justin Jefferson, Josh Jacobs, Trey McBride so far. Then rounds 4 and 5, I grabbed my two wide receivers that I discussed earlier, Courtland Sutton and Zay Flowers. I think those are both pretty high floor, and I think Zay in particular has a higher ceiling than Courtland Sutton does in 2025. So I like those three wide receivers right there with Justin Jefferson, Courtland Sutton, and Zay Flowers. Now let's start hitting on some running backs here. I got DeAndre Swift, who I believe is a projected starter in a Chicago offense with Ben Johnson at offensive coordinator and a much improved offensive line. That has the potential to be a top 15 running back in 2025 that I just got in the 6th round. Then I got Tyrone Tracy Jr. in the 7th round as well. This is a guy who I've discussed on several videos this offseason because I highlighted him and he fit the unsuspecting league-winning running backs criteria I did to a T. Now, if you want more information on what that is particularly, go watch that video because it led me to Chuba Hubbard last year in fantasy football. So you should take advantage of it. Then in round 8, I grabbed Josh Downs as my wide receiver 4, who I believe has a very, very safe floor and a good ceiling to be a flex player in fantasy football redraft leagues. Then round 9, I grabbed Brock Purdy as my quarterback here. So again, I wanted to make sure I was getting a quarterback since I already grabbed an elite tight end at the beginning of the draft. And then I got Tyjae Spears round 10 and Trey Harris round 11. So I got another high upside running back and another high upside wide receiver. I am very happy with this draft right here. But let's check out if I picked at the 106. So at the 106, I ended up grabbing CeeDee Lamb, again for purposes of this video, because I like CeeDee Lamb more than I like Justin Jefferson, but I knew I could get him at the 106 here. Then I went ahead and grabbed Josh Jacobs. Now again, I'm much more comfortable grabbing Josh Jacobs this early in the second round versus what I should have done last time, which is I should have just waited and grabbed a running back in round 3. I needed to make sure I got a good running back anchor as my team's best running back in round 2 because I was able to turn around and get Jalen Hurts in the third round here. Super high floor, very high ceiling in 2025. I love Jalen Hurts. I've discussed him a bunch in fantasy this year. I've got no issues taking him in the third round. Then I went ahead and grabbed Davante Adams and Jalen Waddle as my wide receivers 2 and 3. So what I've got here with my 3 wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb, Davante Adams, and Jalen Waddle, is a good combination of safe floor with CeeDee Lamb and Davante and high ceiling with all of those guys, including Jalen Waddle, who I've discussed a bunch this year about being a very high ceiling player. Then at my RB2 in round 6, I got Travion Henderson, and then as my RB3 in round 7, I got DeAndre Swift again in this draft right here. So again, I'm very happy with those 3 running backs right there. Travion Henderson is someone I believe will carry the majority of the workload and will be extremely efficient doing it in New England's offense, and particularly in a full PPR league right here, which is what we're drafting as, is going to be a guy that I think gets probably 50 plus targets in 2025. So I love having him, and I love having DeAndre Swift, particularly as my running back 3. Then I went ahead, grabbed Evan Ingram as my good tight end here because I went quarterback early. I wanted to make sure I snagged a really high floor tight end in the 8th round. I'm very happy with Evan Ingram there. Then I got Deebo Samuel, a really high upside player, and I don't know how he fell to me in the 9th round. That usually does not happen, so I wouldn't bank on that. But I was able to get a really good steal there with him. Tyjae Spears, round 10, again, a high upside running back who fit the league-winning running back criteria that I was just talking about. And then I grabbed Kyle Williams, another rookie wide receiver who I believe has upside in that New England offense in round 11. So I've got a good combination here of really high upside with a safe first-round pick and an elite quarterback in round 3. And then let's go to mock draft number 3, where I picked at the 109. So at the 109, I started with Malik Neighbors, who I've heard getting some flack lately in the fantasy community. I'm personally not on board with it. I have full trust that he will be a top 5, top 6 wide receiver in fantasy football. I've got no issues taking Malik Neighbors here. Then I grabbed Devon Achane at the top of the 2nd round. Now, Devon Achane is the preferred running back here in the 2nd round for sure. I would definitely want to take him if he is available. So Devon Achane, very happy with that because I think he's got a really high ceiling. Probably not the safest floor, but we'll balance that out here in a little bit. Then I grabbed Jalen Hurts in round 3. Very happy with that pick again. So I've got my safe wide receiver round 1, my anchor running back round 2, and my elite quarterback in round 3. Then the next 2 rounds, I rounded out my wide receiver position with the top 3 guys of Davante Adams and Jameson Williams right here. So again, very happy with the wide receivers. Combo of safe floor with Malik and with Devontae, and then combine that with high ceilings with a guy like Jameson Williams in the 5th round. Travion Henderson in round 6 to get my RB2. Again, love Travion Henderson in the 6th round. I think it's great value. Khalil Shakir as my wide receiver 4. I think is a very, very good wide receiver 4. Flex upside for sure at the wide receiver position right here. Then I got Travis Etienne and Jordan Mason back-to-back at the rounds 8 and 9. Now, I'm very happy with Travis Etienne at his current price. Wouldn't take him much higher than this, but I think he has a lot of upside to be a top 15 running back this year. And same with Jordan Mason. Probably not top 15, but top 20 running back potential as well. A good flex for you in certain weeks of fantasy football in 2025. Then I grabbed Dalton Kincaid in round 10. So I like having Dalton Kincaid as my tight end 1 in round 10. Very comfortable with that. And then I rounded out the 11th round with J.K. Dobbins for my 4th running back spot. So again, to reiterate the draft strategy, why it's going to work this year, the running backs are just more risky when you're taking a running back in round 1. Because the majority of the time, running backs in round 1 had really heavy workloads the prior year. That's why they're being drafted that high. But we went through the research, and what the research shows is that running backs with 350 plus touches, well, the most of the time, not only are those going to be your top 5 running backs at the very least, they're also going to be running backs who are logically going to get injured, play less games, or see a significant opportunity workload drop in the following season in fantasy football. It's just not strategy that's good. We've highlighted it through research. It is not effective as going with wide receivers in the 1st round. You want to make sure to grab that wide receiver early, grab your anchor running back in round 2 or 3, and then grab your elite quarterback or your elite tight end in round 2 or 3. Now you might ask me, well, what if the guy that I want in round 1, round 2, round 3 is gone? And what if another value actually came to me and fell in my lap? Like, let's say that Saquon Barkley falls to the 109. I want to make this crystal clear for everybody. Let the draft come to you. That's ultimately what matters here. So if you're drafting particularly 10 different fantasy teams, you can absolutely take some more shots on different strategies. But I'm just telling you, if you've got one league and you need to hang your hat on what the best draft strategy will be in 2025, I believe it's elite quarterback / elite tight end by round 2 or 3. And that's what you should be working with in 2025. So I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you do want to just go ahead and draft today, because maybe your league is not drafting right now, but you want to draft right now, you're itching to do it. Well, I'm drafting teams on Underdog right now. I've had 120 plus teams on Underdog for big money potential, where I actually won $19,000 playing Underdog Best Ball last year. So if you do want to hop into an Underdog draft, you can go down in the comments. There is a link there, and you can use code FFN to sign up for Underdog. They will match that first deposit, 50% up to $1,000 in bonus credits. That's actually insane right there. So you can get $1,000 free dollars in your Underdog account right out of the gate to start drafting some teams on Underdog. It's a ton of fun. It's best ball, which means you do not have to worry about in-season maintenance and setting your lineups, making trades, making waiver wire additions during the actual season. Underdog will automatically take your best score logged by each position and make sure that it is scored for the particular week. So you are getting the highest possible upside on a weekly basis on your team. But let me know which draft strategy you end up preferring in 2025 if it is not this one. And if you do plan on playing Underdog and you want to see the best draft strategies for Underdog specifically, click on this video right here.